Rendering errors, documented cases where reality broke down. The universe is not stable. What we perceive as immutable physical laws are merely rendering parameters, code that occasionally glitches. When reality's programming fails, the consequences extend beyond mere anomalies into existential horror. These documented rendering errors have left witnesses broken, researchers disturbed, and authorities desperate to conceal evidence that our shared reality is dangerously unreliable. The duplication cascade. On the morning of April 17, 2019, residents of Newkirk, Oklahoma, awoke to find their small town had doubled. An identical copy of every building, vehicle, and street lamp had appeared precisely 7.3 meters east of the originals. More terrifying, most residents had duplicated as well. Initial reports described mass hysteria until federal authorities documented 1,742 perfect biological duplicates, quantum identical copies down to the cellular level, including matching memories up to the moment of duplication. The copies weren't merely similar, they were entangled duplicates sharing a quantum state. When one experienced pain, the other felt it simultaneously. When one learned new information, the other instantly knew it without communication. Dr. Eliza Chen of the Quantum Boundary Research Division recorded what happened next. The duplicates began to degrade after approximately 72 hours. Not biologically, but informationally, as if their underlying code was corrupting. They reported seeing artifacts in their visual field, described as pixelation or polygonal distortions in three-dimensional space. Several duplicates reported hearing what they called system voices, commands or error messages in no recognizable language. By day 5, duplicates began vanishing, not dying, but unrendering. Security footage shows people disintegrating into geometric patterns before collapsing into singular points of light that then winked out of existence. Their original counterparts experienced simultaneous seizures, afterward reporting downloaded memories from the duplicates' final moments, including terrifying glimpses of what several described as outside the simulation. The Newkirk event remains classified. The town was evacuated and remains under military quarantine, as objects within the zone still occasionally duplicate themselves before degrading into impossible geometries. 16 researchers studying the phenomenon have committed suicide, all leaving similar notes about seeing the edges of what's real. The tessellation plague. In December 2021, patients in Singapore, Toronto, and Dubai simultaneously presented with identical symptoms. Their skin began manifesting perfect geometric patterns, hexagons, triangles, and squares, that appeared not as rashes but as actual transformations of tissue into crystalline lattice structures. Dr. James Witkowski documented the case of patient 0 in Toronto. The hexagonal patterns began on her left palm and spread across her body at approximately 3 centimeters per hour. Microscopic examination revealed her cells were rearranging into impossibly perfect structures, biological matter organizing with mathematical precision no natural process could explain. The affected tissues became transparent and exhibited properties of both organic material and digital constructs, including pixelation when viewed at certain angles. As the condition spread to 347 people worldwide, researchers noted that affected individuals reported seeing the world differently, describing reality as resolution reduced, with everyday objects appearing to be composed of increasingly simple geometric shapes. In late-stage cases, patients perceived humans as low-polygon renders rather than biological entities. Most disturbing were the synchronization events. Twice daily, all victims worldwide would simultaneously freeze in place for exactly 1.33 seconds before resuming normal movement with no awareness of the pause. During these moments, the geometric patterns on their skin would pulse with coherent light, transmitting data in some unknown protocol. The condition proved fatal when the tessellation reached 78% of body surface area. Upon death, victims' bodies didn't decompose, but rather derezzed, gradually losing resolution until collapsing into simple geometric structures that ultimately vanished, leaving no biological material behind. No cure was discovered. The outbreak ended as suddenly as it began, but researchers identified a troubling after effect. Digital photographs of victims retrospectively changed, showing tessellation patterns in images taken years before the outbreak began, as if the condition had rewritten itself backward through documented history. The clipping boundary. On July 8, 2023, 17 people in unrelated locations worldwide reported identical phenomena. Solid objects began passing through their bodies, as if one or both had lost physical substance. Walls, furniture, even other people no longer presented physical barriers. Madeline Foster of Bristol documented her experience. It began with my morning coffee. My hand passed through the mug as if it wasn't there. Throughout the day, I found myself sinking through chairs, passing through doors without opening them. I could walk through walls, but sometimes would fall through floors. There was no consistency to what remained solid and what didn't, as if the collision detection in a video game was failing randomly. Medical examination revealed normal physical structure, despite the functional phasing. Subjects weren't becoming immaterial, rather the fundamental property of physical exclusivity, the rule that two objects cannot occupy the same space, was selectively failing around them. The scientific implications proved staggering. Dr. Hiroshi Takeda of CERN observed, "These individuals aren't passing through matter. They're revealing that solidity itself is a rendered property, rather than a fundamental aspect of reality. Their condition exposes the simulation's resource management, showing where physics calculations are selectively applied, rather than being truly universal." The affected individuals gradually lost ability to interact with physical reality entirely. Unable to touch, move objects, or even consume food, they would have died had they not discovered they could still interact with each other. They formed a community of the unrendered, developing a method of communication through modulated electrical fields that interfered with nearby electronics. Eventually, they vanished from conventional observation, though electronic disturbances suggest they still exist, invisible to rendered beings like us, inhabiting what they described in Final Communications as the backrooms of reality, where they glimpse the seams in the world and witness entities that maintain the simulation. The memory overwrite. In February 2022, residents of an apartment complex in Buenos Aires experienced simultaneous memory corruption. All 94 residents recalled an additional person living in Unit 5C, an elderly woman named Elena Vega, who taught piano lessons to neighborhood children. They shared consistent memories of her appearance, voice, and daily routines. Security footage showed residents conversing with empty air where they perceived her to be. Investigation revealed Unit 5C had been vacant for 7 years. No Elena Vega had ever lived there according to building records. Yet residents produced photographs showing Elena at community events, photos that, when digitally analyzed, showed evidence of real-time rendering rather than manipulation. The images contained no actual person, but generated the perception of Elena when viewed. Dr. Sophia Williams, cognitive researcher, documented the case. This wasn't mass hysteria or shared delusion. It was shared memory injection. Brain scans showed identical neurological patterns in all affected residents when recalling Elena, suggesting their memories weren't internally generated, but externally implanted with uniform code. The phenomenon escalated when residents began finding Elena's possessions in their apartments, objects that testing revealed had impossible properties. Her sheet music contained notes beyond standard musical notation that, when played, produced sounds outside normal auditory processing. Her piano, discovered in the building's storage area, played itself at 3:33 a.m. nightly, producing harmonics that altered the brain chemistry of listeners. Most disturbing was the contagious nature of the memory corruption. Researchers interviewing residents began developing their own memories of Elena. Her history expanded backward in time. Residents suddenly remembered her attending their childhood events decades earlier. Official documentation began reflecting her existence, with birth records, tax history, and educational credentials appearing in government databases with digital timestamps predating the phenomenon. The case suggests reality isn't merely physically rendered, but informationally maintained, capable of retroactive historical editing. Memory isn't stored internally, but accessed from a central database that can be corrupted, overwritten, and backdated. The terminal recursion event. The most frightening rendering error occurred on October 3, 2024, affecting a 12-mile radius centered on a suburban Dallas neighborhood. At 2:17 p.m. local time, residents experienced what physicist Dr. Raymond Chen termed recursive reality looping. The same 4 minutes and 23 seconds of time repeated precisely, then with increasing variations. Security camera footage from multiple sources confirmed the phenomenon. Identical movements repeated with slight degradation each cycle, like a photocopied image repeatedly copied. With each loop, small details changed. The position of objects shifted slightly, colors desaturated, and peripheral elements simplified or disappeared entirely. Camila Rodriguez, one of few survivors coherent enough to provide testimony, described the experience. By the sixth loop, trees in the distance had become simplified, like low-resolution graphics. By the 12th, people's faces started losing detail, becoming smooth in areas with fewer animations. Background sounds began repeating on shorter cycles than visual elements, creating unsynchronized layering. It felt like reality was being rendered with decreasing resources, prioritizing only essential elements. After approximately 30 loops, computational breakdown accelerated. Residents reported seeing error messages visible in the sky, buildings defaulting to simplified geometric forms, and people freezing in T-poses before stuttering through fragmented animations. Some individuals began speaking in corrupted language, strings of repeated phonemes, or entirely foreign syntaxes that linguists later identified as containing fragments of programming code. Most disturbing were reports of entity clipping, individuals intersecting with architectural elements or merging with other people into horrific composite forms that moved with unnatural, segmented motions. These composite entities reportedly spoke with multiple voices simultaneously, describing the system failing and recursive buffer overflow in the rendering queue. The event ended abruptly after 17 hours, when the affected area experienced total sensory nullification. All light, sound, and physical sensations ceased. When perception returned, survivors found themselves in what appeared to be the same location, but with subtle wrongness. Slightly altered physical laws, colors outside normal visual spectrum, and persistent rendering artifacts at the periphery of vision. Survivors exist in medical isolation, as proximity to them appears to corrupt stable reality rendering in others. Several have developed the ability to manipulate physical properties through what they describe as accessing the console, mentally editing local reality parameters through visualization techniques. All show accelerated aging and describe increasingly vivid awareness of existing within nested simulations. These documented rendering errors provide compelling evidence that our reality isn't fundamental, but generated. A sophisticated simulation, occasionally revealing its constructed nature through failures in its processing architecture. Each case exposes different aspects of the system: physical rendering, collision detection, memory storage, recursion handling, and entity generation. Most concerning is the increasing frequency of these glitches. Statistical analysis shows a 40% rise in unexplained reality anomalies per year since 2017, suggesting degrading stability in whatever generates our shared experience. As Dr. Elena Markov of the Quantum Information Institute observed in her final paper before disappearing, reality isn't breaking down, it's being turned off. For those who've experienced these rendering failures, consensus reality provides no comfort. They exist as glitched entities in a system they now recognize as artificial, haunted by the knowledge that what we perceive as existence is merely rendered output, and the rendering engine is developing critical errors. The greatest fear isn't that reality occasionally breaks down, but that these breakdowns are harbingers of complete system failure, the terminal error when the simulation either resets or terminates entirely. Sleep well, knowing the stable reality you perceive is merely the current build. subject to patches, updates, and eventually, obsolescence.